is happening, or is this normal? And I think that's part of the reason why we wrote the book too, is to allow people into our journey, see that some of these things are normal and happen to others, and to help people get knowledge, because knowledge is power and it can bring comfort to others.
Welcome to Care Roundup with Bracashirts. Today we have three women who have authored the book entitled Hope Among Us. Welcome, ladies.
Thank
you.
Thank you so much for having us.
Oh, thank you for agreeing to come to Bracashirts Care Roundup. To get started, how about each one of you introduce yourself and a small excerpt of your cancer journey?
Sure. I'll go ahead and start. I'm Jennifer Dresser, and I'm 46 years old, and I live in Elk Grove, California. I've been married for almost 25 years, and I'm a stay-at-home mother of 4 children. Their ages were 2, 7, 10, and 13 years old at the time of my first cancer diagnosis. In 2012, I was only 37 years old when I began to do self-breast exams. And it was actually on my first exam that I felt a hard pea-sized nodule on the outer edge of my left breast. And after a biopsy, I was diagnosed with stage 1 breast cancer. I opted for a double mastectomy, followed by 5.5 years of hormone therapy. Less than a year later, I started having some intense pain down my left arm, and it would radiate down into my hand. And I was then diagnosed with breast cancer for a second time. This time it was found in my chest wall, axillary area, and my lymph nodes. I completed active treatment actually just last June of last year. And I just recently co-authored a book called Hope Among Us, Stories of 3 Young Breast Cancer Survivors.
Hi, I'm Rhonda Eyzanguirre. I am 42 years old. I'm a school psychologist at the high school level. I have 2 children. At the time of my breast cancer diagnosis, they were only 6 and 9 years old. I've been married for 16 years. I found out that I started to have symptoms of breast cancer when I was only 38. I had a lump on my right breast, and I noticed that the lump would actually get bigger when I had PMS symptoms, and then it would seem to disappear after the PMS symptoms. So after a few months, I contacted my doctor and went in, and right away I was referred for a biopsy the next day. I was diagnosed on March 13th of 2017, and then I did a whole year of active treatment. Actually, the end of my treatment was when I had my last surgery, and that was March 13th of 2018. So 1 full year later, and I'm also a proud co-author of Hope Among Us.
Hi there, my name is Mari Guzman. I am also a proud co-author of Hope Among Us. I am 43, I live in Elk Grove, California. I work as an attorney by day, but I am a mother of 2 very active boys, and I've been married for almost 15 years. My boys at the time of my diagnosis were 6 and 11. And I was actually 42 when I was diagnosed in 2019. So I just very recently actually finished my treatment. My mother is a breast cancer survivor. So I started having annual mammograms when I was 40. And in January of 2019, I had a mammogram, and it was clear, normal mammogram. So I was pretty comfortable that everything was okay. And I wasn't doing self-breast exams as regularly as I should. But in August of 2019, I was driving to work, and I felt a shooting pain in my left breast. And I decided to just feel around in the area where the pain occurred. And I found a lump in my breast, and it really caught me off guard. So I went about my work day, and when I got home, I really evaluated my breast. It was really concerning. I knew the signs that I needed to be looking for, and my husband also took a look, and he was concerned. So I immediately called my healthcare provider, and I made an appointment, and I went in the next day. And I was evaluated in the breast cancer center, and the doctor that evaluated me was very concerned. So she immediately set me up with another mammogram and biopsy, which just occurred a couple days later. And I was diagnosed invasive ductal carcinoma. And about a month after that, I had surgery, a lumpectomy, and breast reduction. And it was after my surgery that I was diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer. I had 11 out of 16 positive lymph nodes. Which is what put me into the stage 3 category, unfortunately. So because of my stage and the number of lymph nodes, I underwent about 5 months of chemotherapy, and I took a little bit of time, and then I had 30 rounds of radiation. And then I also, upon completion of chemo, I also started my anti-hormone suppression medication. I get a Lupron shot every month, and I take a Remedix daily. And then just in November of 2020, I completed surgery on my left breast to make my breast look the same. I had a reduction. So most of my treatment was just completed, gosh, not that long ago. So I'm a very recent survivor.
Wow, 3 really unique stories. How did you manage to come together and meet?
So as you can see, all 3 of us live here in sunny Elk Grove, California. And we actually met, Mari and I met more than 10 years ago when our sons were in preschool. And then Jennifer and I met about 6 years ago when our daughters were in kindergarten. So we have become friends as our children became friends, and we've shared in the joys and ups and downs of parenting, and also we've shared in the struggles and triumphs of our breast cancer journeys.
Yeah, we all live in the same community, and our children all go to the same school. So we're connected in many ways.
And you also have the same doctor, yes?
We do.
Absolutely. Yes. The doctor that actually wrote the foreword in our book has been a very, very present in our cancer journey and in our survivorship. And we were diagnosed at the same facility, same hospital, and yes, same oncologist. Yes. So our journey is very similar yet unique at the same time.
Yes.
And also all 3 of us, our moms were all diagnosed with breast cancer. So our moms are all survivors as well.
Ditto. Ditto. So let's get down to the nitty-gritty here. What do you believe is your biggest challenge that you had to overcome?
That's a tough one, because there's so many different challenges at every aspect of your journey on breast cancer. Initially, I would say that probably one of my biggest challenges was I was so consumed with doing research and getting second opinions, because I desperately wanted to make the right decision, because I had 4 young kids, as I had mentioned. And so the pressure was so heavy on me to make the right decision so I could be there long term for my kids and my husband. But once you have a game plan in place, that really does help with the mental aspect of it. And so I would say too, also initially during the surgeries, that was tough, because you're limited with your arm usage for about 6 weeks after your surgeries. And so when you have small kids, to not be able to use your arms is really difficult. And more recently with my second diagnosis, the chemo and radiation, I think one of my challenges, because I'm a go type of person, I found that I had to, force myself to slow down. A day or 2 after treatments, I'd want to take on my normal motherly responsibilities. And I would just have to tell myself, no, I need to slow down and take a nap. And it was okay to let some things go. And and of course, losing breasts and hair was also definitely a challenge, which, would be natural.
Absolutely.
I would say I agree with Jennifer. There are a lot of challenges. For me, one of them was that I had decided to still work during my treatment. So I was working full time during the second half of my chemo and all of my radiation and 3 of the 4 surgeries. So I was trying to balance that as well as having the 2 young kids at home. And I felt like I was pulled in a lot of different directions. I, of course, didn't have much energy and I had a lot of things on my plate. One thing that helped me with that was I did choose to use cooling caps. And so cooling caps are used, to basically freeze your head. It feels like you're dipping your head in a bucket of ice, but it works to preserve the hair. And for me, that really helped to have a sense of normalcy when I was at work, because I work in a high school. And also when I was around my young children, I was able to keep about half of my hair. And so even when I was out in the community, I felt that helped me a little bit to appear normal, even though inside I didn't feel that way. It gave an exterior facade that helped me go about my day-to-day business.
Wow, that's a wonderful story. In fact, you'll see on my website a big under my products is Penguin Cold Caps, which is in Toronto here in Canada, and I know the owner well. So I and you're right, the women do not have to lose the hair. Of course, there's many who wish they had known that in advance.
Yeah,
so
right.
This is yes. So thank you for mentioning that. That's wonderful. And how about you, Mari?
I think obviously very many challenges in a cancer journey, both physical and emotional. And I think I struggled more with the emotional component of the journey. And initially I was paralyzed by fear, and I had to somewhat get a grip so that I could move forward. I struggled with depression and anxiety throughout my treatment and surgery. And so I actually worked with a therapist throughout to help me with some of those challenges and fears. And I actually became very afraid of taking calls from the doctor, going to appointments alone, because I was so afraid of what they were going to tell me. And then COVID hit and the pandemic ensued, and that was a huge challenge for me. And I was going to treatments. I was still going through chemo when the pandemic hit. So all of a sudden, my kids are home, they're distance learning, my husband's working from home, and I'm having to go to treatment by myself. And I was sort of cut off from the world. So that support system that we need to get through the cancer journey, what I call the village that it takes, I didn't have access to it anymore because I couldn't, and I was immunocompromised, so I had to be extremely safe. Mm-hmm. So I had to learn to navigate my fears alone and go to my treatments alone and do appointments alone. And also I would come home and I would still do distance learning with my children and try to do all of the things that I felt that I needed to do going through the pandemic. So a very challenging time, but also there was a lot of growth from those challenges.
Absolutely. Wow, those are amazing stories. How much time did you spend researching your breast cancer and your treatment regimes?
For me, I spent a lot more time the first time with my diagnosis, just because I seemed to have more options with where I was at. I actually agonized whether or not to do a lumpectomy with radiation or to do a mastectomy, and whether or not to do chemo. But because of my age and not wanting to do radiation, I decided on doing the double mastectomy. And I also opted not to do chemo because of my oncologist's recommendation. And then I actually even gotten a second opinion from another one, and they recommended the same thing because they weren't sure that I would benefit from it. And so, but with my second diagnosis, it was more of an obvious choice on what I had to do, since it was, you know, in my axillary and lymph nodes and chest wall. So really my choices weren't as big of a guess on what I needed to do. So, but between the two diagnoses, I've undergone 6 different surgeries, 16 rounds of chemo, and 28 sessions of radiation. And I am still continuing to do hormone therapy, which, believe it or not, it does have its own set of challenges.
Yes, it does.
Well, I had 3 positive lymph nodes, and so that put me in stage 2. But what was interesting about my diagnosis is that I had 13 tumors. So in my right breast, they actually found 13 small tumors. And due to that, and again, because I was only 38 with 13 tumors, I took whatever treatments they offered me, and I didn't do much research. I researched what the side effects were, but I knew anything that was on the table, I was accepting it automatically. And so, you know, I went through pretty similar. I went through the 8 rounds of chemo. I did end up doing Taxol every other week, just because I was using the cooling caps. So that would give me only 4 rounds of Taxol instead of 12. Made more sense with the cooling caps. And then I also did 28 rounds of sessions of radiation, and I did do the 4 surgeries, and then also I'm still on Arimidex like the other 2 ladies, so I do have some of the side effects of Arimidex. But in terms of the research, yeah, I was given with the 13 tumors, whatever they offered, I was accepting.
Absolutely. I understand that, like right off the bat.
Research is complicated in that I didn't want to be Google MD and go on Google and do a ton of research because, again, back to the fear, everything I read was like awful. So I very much actually stayed away from that kind of research. And also I feel that what we find online is very general and every case is very specific. So what you read cannot even be truly accurate or applicable in your particular case. But I did do a lot of research in that I had a lot of questions, and I kind of went straight to the source, medical professionals. I have family members in the medical profession that I was in constant contact with, that had connections with breast cancer doctors. And what I learned is that there is very much a protocol when it comes to breast cancer. It is so full, it's so funded with research, and it's almost handled the same way all over the world. And I didn't have a choice when it came to treatment. I knew that if I wanted to be here long-term, chemo was the only way to do that with respect to the number of lymph nodes that I had. So I wasn't too concerned about the research. So I didn't have options. My doctor didn't say, oh, you don't have to go through chemo. With stage 3, you have to have chemo. And the radiation. But I did, like I said, have questions, and I always reached out to either my oncologist or people that I knew that could get me the answers, so that I felt comfortable moving forward.
Wow. And each one of you so unique. And yet I never had to have chemo or radiation, but I ended up getting a massive strep C infection after my surgery. Ended up with a PICC line and antibiotics for 3 months. And I just we all have our own personal experience that at the time seems horrendous. And yet we move on and we get past this. And this inner strength that we end up building is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Just to expand on that a little bit, I think too, when I think of research too, I also think of like online groups or support groups and people that have shared experiences, because I think along in the breast cancer journey, side effects, like things start happening and you're not even aware of why this is happening, or is this normal? And I think that's part of the reason why we wrote the book too, is to allow people into our journey see that some of these things are normal and happen to others, and to help people get knowledge, because knowledge is power and it can bring comfort to others.
Absolutely. And my next question was, did you use a cancer coach, change your eating habits, or do any major lifestyle changes? And already you are cancer coaching in what you're doing, which is
Right.
wonderful. But maybe you could address that question.
Sure.
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
Absolutely. I did all of those things. The first time I was diagnosed, I had a friend who put me in contact with a breast cancer mentor, and I was super grateful for her because she was very knowledgeable. She told me what tests to request, and then also what questions to be asking.
Yes.
So, knowledge is power there. And I've always been physically active in my life, so I continue to be physically active and continue to exercise. But and throughout my life, I've observed a very strict health code, no alcohol or tobacco. So obviously, I continue to do that. But now I do try to eat a more plant-based diet. In a perfect world, I'd be able to give up meat and desserts, but I am trying to do a little more, a little more plant-based. And I did see a natural oncologist for a little bit, and due to some of his research and things that I've also done, I use natural deodorants, first of all, now. And I do try to stay away from parabens and sulfates and other chemicals in a lot of the products that I buy. So.
Similar to Jennifer, I was fairly healthy before, but I did make some changes. I joined a clinical trial at our hospital, and the clinical trial was for a full year. The first 6 months it was focused on whole foods, plant-based eating, as well as daily exercise and stress management. So it had all 3 prongs, and we met on Zoom because it was during COVID times. We met on Zoom weekly, and then we also had to log our food intake for a full 6 months. So everything we ate and drank for every part of the day for 6 months. And then we had the health coaches from our hospital would review the food logs, give us suggestions. We also had meal planning, prep, and they would have weekly either videos or articles to read, and of course the support group meeting with other people going through this trial. And they took a lot of measures as well in terms of blood work and things like that. So it was a really useful experience, and we were able to get the instructional piece as well as the support and the feedback from other people that were cancer survivors going through it.
Mari?
My experience with respect to a cancer coach, I think I looked internally to our healthcare provider. They had great resources such as dietitians, a wonderful nurse practitioner that was a wealth of knowledge and provided advice and answered questions with respect to diet, and many other things along the way during treatment. And my goal through treatment was getting through the treatment. And our healthcare provider also aligns us with what you could call a mentor. So somebody who has gone through cancer before, and they'll come to chemo, provide you with their phone number, and you can reach out to them. And so I did have that type of mentor that I could have asked questions to as well. And I think some of more of my lifestyle changes came after my diagnosis. And one of the biggest lifestyle changes for me was a job change. I worked for 15 years in a very, very stressful environment. And I really wanted to minimize or have the ability to control my stress more. So actually, I took a year off while I went through treatment, and then I returned to work part-time, but I found a new job, and I just recently started a new job that I think is going to still be somewhat stressful, but not the kind of stress that I was enduring for all of those years. For me, stress is very important to minimize because it can really contribute to a recurrence. I also work closely with a dietitian to try to make changes in what I eat. And for me, I'm really trying to reduce sugar, processed foods, grains, things like that. And very much trying to live a healthier lifestyle, but also giving myself grace and living. So some of the things that I love, I do like a glass of wine here and there, and I love chocolate and sweet treats. So, I realize the importance in making the lifestyle changes to reduce recurrence. And I'm also trying to exercise more. And by exercise, it means walking. I'm participating in a program right now for cancer survivors called Triumph that's offered here in California and other places as well. And it's really great with
Wonderful.
with respect to providing a community to reach out to. And it's the trainers are cancer certified specialists. So they're working with me on a lot of the pains that I have due to the hormone suppression medication that I'm taking. And I also changed all of my makeup, paraben free lotions, shampoos. I'm really conscious about what I put on my body and what I put in my body as best as I can. And but it's a work in progress. And so I just finished my surgery in November. So I'm getting there. And I have the type of personality that I feel like I have to go from A to Z very quickly. But one thing I've tried to teach myself is that baby steps are okay. And hopefully I have time to get where I need to. So.
Well, I find this really interesting because I'm taking courses now to become a certified holistic cancer care coach. And everything you're saying is exactly what they're teaching.
Yeah.
So, absolutely. And I find it fascinating that it's not easy to adopt change. And I like your baby steps. Yes.
Change is hard, and we've been through such traumatic things. And so I think that it's important to just look for the tools that are going to allow us to make that change and doing it healthy, so.
Absolutely. So if you had to do this over again, hopefully none of us have to go through it anymore. I just had a lumpectomy 5 days ago.
Oh, wow.
And
my goodness.
Yeah, my cancer was back in 2018.
Oh.
Had a radical mastectomy, and it's still, but it happens, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Can I ask you, how was it discovered in a routine check by your physician?
I felt it first.
Okay.
Yeah, and so even after breast surgery, you still have to do breast examinations. Yes, I think that's a critical point of more than anything else is you never stop your routines. It's educating across the board. You can never say enough, I swear.
I think it's so important to know our breast inside and out, whether we have dense breast tissue, what our breasts look like. And it's so important. And the key to surviving longer is finding it early. And I had to learn that the hard way, but I can't stress enough the importance of getting the mammograms. If you have dense breasts, getting the MRIs and just doing those breast exams. It's so important.
So if you had one thing you had to do over again, what would that change be?
Well, I think for me, I would not be content with just one biopsy because like you, I had a double mastectomy and I kind of had this false sense of security that, I really just have to worry about distance recurrence now, right? And not another local. So after my first diagnosis, I noticed, and I'd had the double mastectomy, it had probably been about a year. I started noticing a little lump on the incision scar where my original tumor was. And I had brought that up to my doctor, my oncologist at the time, and he thought that it was just suture tells, basically something just left over, residual of the stitches. And so he kind of dismissed it. And then months later, I brought it up to him because the lump was still there. And at that time, he ordered a biopsy, and it was very small. So it was kind of hard for them to get. and at that time they deemed it as scar tissue. And then 5 years later, that same lump turned into invasive breast cancer. And so I wish now, I hadn't had that false sense of security and just saying, oh yeah, it's scar tissue. If I had, told them and been more advocating for another biopsy years earlier, then I may have been able to prevent it from spreading, into my axillary area and lymph nodes. So
yeah. And you said an important key there, self-advocacy, and how important it is. Yes,
Absolutely.
yes. And how about you, Rhonda?
Oh, I would say, there's a few things I would have done differently, but one of them probably would be, there was a program I went into called Camp Koru, and this was a program for young cancer survivors to learn how to surf in Hawaii. It's a wonderful program, and I was accepted, and I was able to go for a week into this program, and they had, amazing food, the camaraderie, learning to collaborate with other young cancer survivors. But unfortunately, the last night of that program, my implant had started to leak. And so I had only had surgery, about 6 weeks prior. And so I was alone in Hawaii, not with any family or friends. And that was pretty nerve-wracking. And so I did come back to California, had to have emergency surgery a few days later. So in retrospect, I would have given my body more time to heal. I was so eager to celebrate being done. And when I got into that program in Hawaii, I said, yes, let's do it. But honestly, our bodies need a lot more time to just rest and recover. And I'd say to all the listeners, just, try and see that you can do fun things, but maybe not right now. It's better to wait and make sure that you're giving your body all the rest and recovery time that it needs. And that would have been my advice to my younger self.
Excellent point. Yes, because we do want to run right back to our into our lives, and I know it's hard to slow down and make those changes.
Yep.
I think kind of launching off of what you said, I might have changed a lot of things, but the one thing that I know that I've talked about with my husband and others is I would have given myself more grace while going through treatment and after surgery. And by giving myself more grace, I think I tried to shield my children from my pains and my suffering, and shield my mom and dad and shield others around me, and felt that I needed to be strong for everyone else, and that almost like I wasn't going through what I was going through just to be this strong person. But what I've learned is that there's so much strength in vulnerability and letting your guard down and letting others in to help. And that's not a sign of weakness. It's actually a sign of strength. And like Rhonda said, more grace to allow more recovery time after treatment or after surgery, and not get right back to where we were before, because it's not, we couldn't do that. So I just think I tried to continue to give myself grace now. And I wish I had given myself more grace then. And I think that my journey might have been a little easier for me. But it's hard to say that I would change that because it was my journey. But I would tell someone going through it now, please give yourself grace and time. And it shows so much strength in doing that.
And I noticed behind you, your book.
Yes.
Hope Among Us. And I did order it. I still haven't received it, but Amazon's a little slow. And great picture of each of you. It's wonderful.
Thank
so
you.
How can, other than through Amazon, how else can people purchase your book?
Well, it is only available for purchase on Amazon right now, but it is available in paperback, hardcover, and Kindle ebook. But I would say that listeners can also go to our new website, hopeamongusbook.com, or join our Facebook page at Hope Among Us Book. So thank you again so much for having us.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much for all you've contributed, not only in this program, but this book. I can hardly wait to get it, because it's like today I've shared a piece of you that I just that is, wow, it's what you've gone through is amazing. And yet every single one of you are there advocating and sharing and caring for other women. And it is for everyone, it's hope among us.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's healing to do that.
It is.
It's
And
healing.
that giving back is so beautiful. And I thank you for being part of our Bracashirts Cancer Care Roundup. I wish you all the best in your healing, your spiritual journey, and with your families and yourself in healing.
Thank you. And the same to you. Wishing you health in
Yes.
your journey as well.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Again, I will send you a copy of the video.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.